Well, hey there, team. Welcome back to another bit of a chat video, I suppose. This will probably be part 3 in the trilogy that has been the roller coaster of talking about reviewing and potentially throwing my hat into the arena, at least in some sort of formal capacity. If you've seen the previous videos, you'll see that. You can also probably tell by the way I'm talking that the other shoe is going to drop, because while I still stand by the proof of concept that I floated, and I think it's probably a pretty good idea if you are so inclined to implement it, I can't help but wonder and think of 2 other parts to the puzzle that I didn't really think about. One would be the idea of maybe just let the industry burn. Like, my focus has been so heavily based on trying to repair and restore the previous establishment. And by the way, I've had so much feedback on these videos. It's been really welcome. I appreciate all the positivity and constructive criticism otherwise as well. Like, generally speaking, it's been very civil, both those for and against the system. But something that sticks out in my mind right immediately as I say this is someone pointed out that I perhaps had romanticized the idea of game reviews. And that's probably true, to be perfectly honest. Was the established system ever actually really that good? I suppose maybe in the very beginning, but at this point I'm speculating. I feel like for as long as I can remember, it has probably just been run by journalists trying to be journalists. In fact, as I sort of commented on in one of the videos, that a lot of YouTubers I have issue with because they're trying to use their channel, their commentary, their clickbait or whatever as a stepping stone into becoming a writer in the games industry or a voice actor in the games industry. Like, we see this happen. Before that happened in the gaming journalism space, quite often, I mean, you still to this day, but this was going on for a long time earlier, you would have someone that's not really interested in video games taking the journalism job. So they've got the journalism degree or whatever you want to call it, the qualifications to do the journaling side, but not really an interest in gaming. And so they just do the job to get a couple of years of it on their resume and then try and move on to bloody New York Times or something like that. Anyway, my point is, even before we bucked at the corruption of the system, was that because the system worked well in the early days, or was it because we really didn't have the internet and the recourse of idiots like me being able to just pick up a microphone and make a video and rally the boys, right? I know I'm not the biggest channel, but, you know, a lot of the pushback culture that focus arguably on mostly negative stuff in the gaming space, and I've talked about this, I don't necessarily begrudge them, but I don't want to be them either. But they're kind of consumer watchdogs, right? Anything that the industry does wrong and puts a foot wrong, they will jump on it, which is probably good, and I think it's probably sort of pendulum swung over exaggerated as a reaction, because we've gone decades without that kind of recourse, voice of the people kind of thing. So I suppose what I'm circling there is, was the system actually ever really to serve us, or to serve, you know, big newspaper and media and all that first, and us being useful idiots that couldn't really speak up or speak back? I wonder. And so perhaps there's something to be said about letting it burn. My system still seems pretty sound, and it's been a good experiment going through it, and I've come very, very close to committing and pulling the trigger. But this introduces the other half, the other thought that I had, in the words of the brilliant Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park. I spent so long thinking about if I could do it that I never really stopped to ask if I should do it, and to drill into it deeply. Like, let's put it this way. I still think it's a pretty cool system. It's an interesting idea. And honestly, if you are enamored with it, I encourage you. Pick up a microphone, start a YouTube video today, take this entire system that I have laid out and do it. But the thing is, I don't have it in my heart really to do this and keep a sort of, not a straight face and not necessarily keep my integrity, but I think at a much more sort of primal level, but to enjoy it. So while this has all been going on, I kind of did take the jump. So I'll take you through. I've been sort of reviewing a game in the background, And that also plays into this as well, because I've had a pretty miserable experience with it, and I've gotten to a point where I'm 5 or 6 hours in, and I just do not want to play any more of it. I don't want to give it its 18 hours. I don't actually want to rank it out of 100, because the truth is, at least in its current state, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. So it doesn't matter if it's 1 out of 100 or 30 out of 100. I know what I know about it. And to continue to, let's say, force myself to play it for X hours would just be an exercise in misery. And it kind of introduces a really unescapable bias in that I'm just going to hate the game more and more, even if I try my best to be chill about it. Anyway, we'll talk about it. I'm not necessarily trying to bash the game. I don't think I'm even going to put it in the title, so we'll sneak it in here if you made it this far into the video. But it's called Enigma of Fear. It's not exactly super high profile, and you could probably do a whole video on this about games kind of, I don't want to say falsely being propped up, but they're being propped up by a separate fandom from what you would call the mainstream gaming space. In this case, it's actually a YouTuber game. I had to really look into it because if you go onto the Steam page, you'll see it's actually got a lot of great reviews, a lot of followers from stats, right? And concurrent players. So there's actually a base behind it, but a lot of us, at least in the West, have probably never heard of it. And that's because it's made by a Portuguese YouTuber. I believe his name's Selbit, and he's very, very large. And as best as I can tell, and it's difficult because all of this is in Portuguese, all of the Steam discussion is Portuguese. There's so much that it's difficult to easily just sift information. But the dude kind of went, not dark, but he stopped being a YouTuber like 5 years ago. And I think that's because he's gone into full-time game development, which is admirable. Good for you, man. This is really kind of cool. Putting your money where your mouth is, as it were. So he's built this game up, and I started playing it. It's kind of a survival horror. It has these like diorama environments with pixel art in the foreground. I'll give you a mini review, basically. And in the opening, it's really interesting. Actually, the first couple of hours, I was really liking it. I was. It's not exactly super challenging, but and the world and the characterization, it's okay. You know, the music's quite throwback to Resident Evil. So like in the early going, it was a pretty good experience, to be honest. Has some unusual intrigue between like switching characters and etc. I don't even want to ruin it because maybe you do want to give it a go yourself. But there were bugs that started compounding and just piling up to the point where it became really insufferable as an experience. And where we're talking things like menus breaking, like backing out of a menu too fast when you're launching into a game or whatever, and then so it started the game, but it doesn't load in properly and all the UI just disappears. I've been stuck out of bounds multiple times in several areas. The telegraphing and fidelity is not fantastic, like the way that you run. There's a lot of sort of, well, we'll get into this boss fight that broke me, but you know, there's sort of timings moving through hazards that turn on and off sort of thing, but your hitbox and that thing's hitbox isn't very clear. It's all very sort of dirty, and yet it's sort of asking for precision, and it becomes a little bit frustrating when you get hit by something and you couldn't see it because it's obscured by the camera being behind a wall or something like that. It starts to really fall apart pretty fast. And then the world suddenly goes from these really wonderful little diorama Resident Evil type, like you start in this kind of mansion, and then it goes open world and it really lets you off the leash. It stops mapping properly, like as in you don't really know where you're going, and it becomes this, you know, 10% of it was this cool little mansion, and now 90% of it is fucking around in this giant empty kind of forest that kind of all looks the same. And as soon as these environments opened up, the performance tanks as well, the frame rate's going down to like 10, 20 frames, and it won't stop. It's not a memory leak or anything like that. It is actually a performance coding problem with the larger environments. So yeah, it's kind of really bad from a more objective, functional perspective, right? Like, again, I've already sung my praises about a lot of the artistic aesthetic direction, but functionally, mechanically, it's become unpleasant to play. And then tied to the frame rate, I can't even open menus, right? So if I'm trying to open the menu to exit the game or adjust the video settings or whatever, it seems to be timed to the frame refresh rate. So I'm spamming escape or start, just desperately trying to get the menu to open, and it won't open because the entire build is just breaking. So it's just not very good. It's actually noticeably quite bad. Anyway, I know I'm bashing this game, but I'll finish my little story because might as well put a bow on it. But it culminates in a boss fight, which from a game design perspective is actually really quite weak. It's not really combat, it's more, moving around through this arena and going into these doors. And ultimately, each room inside one of these doors will have another 3 doors, if you want to put it on paper. You got to navigate all the little hazards and get through and then run out one of the doors at the end. Now, here's the thing. That door will either lead into the next room in the sequence, or it will kick you back out to the main room. So it's a sort of guessing game of pick from 3 doors, and you have to do it 3 times until you get through that whole section. So you have to start memorizing which door is the correct one, and if you're going in the wrong one, it just resets the entire puzzle again. On top of that, if you take any damage or whatever, that keeps carrying over. Then you have to do this 3-door sequence 3 times in the Master Arena. And if you die at any point in this, and the game's not exactly super difficult, but again, some of these timing puzzles might get you because the telegraphing's not great. If you do die, it resets the entire thing. There are no checkpoints, no nothing. So it's infuriating. It's like a 20-minute boss fight, but if you die 15 minutes into it, you start again. And that had happened to me a few times. And then when it was finally done and I was about to sort of leave the area, I was just having a look around and I managed to clip past an area by accident, just seeing if there was anything to pick up. And I couldn't get back in. I was basically out of bounds, broken. And so, you exit to menu and come back in and it didn't autosave after the boss. So I had to fight the boss fight again. Anyway, yeah, so look, honestly, a pretty miserable experience. And as far as systems go, pretty objectively provable as well, right? It's not necessarily that I'm saying it's bad because I don't like the art. I quite like the art. It's bad because it's broken in a lot of ways. And yet, go check out the reviews and that. It's being very well reviewed within its niche that's being kind of propped up by, from what I can understand, is the dude's core Portuguese fandom. They're all very, enthusiastic about it. But yeah, honestly, under a critical eye, I had a pretty miserable experience and I don't want to play it anymore. Anyway, so this has gone on and turned into a mini review. It kind of helps back the proof of concept, I suppose. But this is the most clean-cut example of a kind of bad game. No offense to the developer. This is dispassionate. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just giving you facts. And yet, I don't want to play more of it. I don't want to play another 12 hours. I don't want to review it. This is not how I enjoy playing games. And I think, as valiant as the idea of trying to restore the system to some sort of, romanticize was the word that a commenter used, but it's a good word. It actually describes the example exactly. Instead of trying to restore the system to its previous form, and as covered, it's not really something that my heart's in. Maybe we do just let it all fall over and burn. It's pretty clear something is happening in the game industry. I think you would have to be asleep at the wheel not to realize that most developers in the high-profile space are kind of riding on the coattails of predecessors. A lot of the studios that people hold hope out for, like the guys doing Avowed, Obsidian, who in there is still the OG people that made the Obsidian games that you love? Who's still left that made Fallout New Vegas? I would argue no one. So maybe we just let it topple over and we continue what we're doing. Am I backing out? Well, yeah, sure, whatever. Choose your wordplay, whatever. But the truth is, it's been really quite lovely because these videos have done well and I've got a lot of feedback. I've got a lot of comments from them. And it's not about stroking my ego, but a lot of people have said the main draw with me is, in fact, my integrity. As much as I meme about the jokes and all that, that I'm honest, I am not bought, and in my casual caveman approach, I just give honest feedback. And I guess the point that I'm coming to, as much as this has been a cool sort of intellectual exercise, because that's ultimately we've gone full circle in some way, was what I was doing ever broken or needed fixing? I don't think any of you are asking me to change the system. This is a me problem. This is a Scarlett kind of taking himself a bit too seriously problem, I suppose. Doing a worth your time, worth your money overview every day to shout out interesting games and put them on your radar and give you a quick blurb, that's a service. And that's all I need to be. in gaming. That's all you guys need me to be. I don't need to be some authority, and we've discussed it. I don't want to be the next big reviewer. My motivation in all of this was only because I see a problem. And I see the next generation of reviewers are going to run into the same problem, where people are going to start tearing shreds off them for taking sponsorships and that, etc., for going to preview events. They will be the next target after the AAA industry has been appropriately sundered by the watchdogs. Like, mark my words. And I just felt that maybe there is room for a new type of reviewer. And I still stand by the observation, and I encourage people to take my system and run with it. But the truth is, I don't want to be that guy. I'm not interested in journalism or journalistic integrity. I don't want to turn it into a job. I don't want to play a game for 18 hours that I fucking hate for the sake of a system. I just want to be a normie gamer like you. I play a game for a couple of hours. If I like it, I'll tell you. If I don't like it, I'll tell you. And in the rest of my downtime as a gamer, I'm going to play things like last night, I couldn't sleep. I had tummy upset. I got up in the middle of the night and played some bloody LA Noire. Because why not? It was on my mind. I love that game, you know? I played a little bit of bloody Lego Jurassic World. I don't think I've got footage for it, which is a bit tragic. And that was really fun. It was kind of, a bit of whimsy. I've never really played it. It was sitting in my library for 10 years and I never booted it up. And that was cool. And the thing is, if I decide that I'm going to be some rigid, self-serious reviewer that only reviews modern games against a structured system, there's no room for me to do that, right? There's no room for early access. As much as I have my issues with it, I like the idea of showing you guys early access games. A lot of them I won't play because I want to wait for them to be fully released. But at the same time, if these guys are going to give me their keys in my inbox and I've got a platform to show it to you, I might as well, right? I don't see the harm in that. Look at Path of Exile 2. That's going to be early access, and it looks like it's going to be better than most games that came out this year. I badly want to sink dozens of hours into that game, but under this review system, there won't be any room for that. No, it's a good system. I still stand by it. And just because I created it and floated it and maybe got a bunch of you boys G'd up about it, doesn't necessarily mean it's even for me in the first place. So look, I'll round it out. This video's gone on too long already. I truly apologize if you feel blue-balled by this. This was never the intent. Like I said, I started reviewing a game in the background. I was kind of all in on the system until I realized by doing it that it kind of made me more miserable than what I want to do, which was just continue being me. So we'll probably return to business as usual until I, have some other bloody stroke of brilliance that I start. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Team, let's wrap it up there. Might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.